So, Elmwood, right? It's this little town that's kinda cute but, you know, has its secrets. I've seen a lot here, but nothing quite like what happened with Michael and Sarah. You remember them, don't you? They were like the golden couple around here. Anyway, Michael, he's this regular guy, right? Works at the local bank, loves his little garden, and man, he's crazy about Sarah. They've been together since high school, prom king and queen, the whole shebang. Their house? Picture perfect. Two kids, a dog, and even those cheesy family photos on the wall. But here's where it gets messy. One day, Michael finds out Sarah has been seeing someone else. Yeah, you heard that right. Sarah, of all people. I still remember the look on Michael's face when he told me. It was like someone had just pulled the rug from under his feet. He's wandering around town, looking like a lost puppy. Can't focus at work, can't sleep. His heart's torn up, right? He's hurt, confused, and, honestly, a bit angry. Who wouldn't be? But there's also this look in his eyes, like he can't believe it. Like part of him still thinks he's gonna wake up from this bad dream. Sarah, she's keeping to herself. You can tell she knows she's messed up. No more of her usual chit-chat at the grocery store. It's like she's avoiding everyone. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of shame. Who knows? They're kids, bless them. They're too young to get what's going on. They just wonder why mommy and daddy aren't laughing together like they used to. It's heartbreaking, really. And the affair? It's the talk of the town. Elmwood's not big, so word spreads like wildfire. You've got people taking sides, gossiping over fences, the usual drama. Some folks feel bad for Michael. Others are whispering about what might have driven Sarah, but no one really knows the whole story. Then, there's this twist. Michael, out of the blue, comes up with this idea. An open marriage. For a whole year. Sounds crazy, right? But he's serious. It's like he thinks this is some way to fix things, to understand why Sarah did what she did, to maybe even save their marriage. It's a wild idea. Some say it's brave. Others call it plain foolish. But there's something about the way Michael says it. It's like he's got this plan, something up his sleeve. He's not just rolling over and giving up. No, there's more to it. It's like he's playing chess while the rest of us are stuck playing checkers. So, that's how it starts. This whole year of, whatever you want to call it, freedom, exploration, desperation, it's hard to pin down. But one thing's for sure. Elmwood's never seen anything like it, and it's just the beginning. You see, Michael and Sarah, they're about to go on a journey, not just outside their marriage, but inside themselves. And let me tell you, it's going to be one heck of a ride. So, Michael's come up with this wild idea, right? An open marriage for a whole year. I mean, who does that? But that's Michael for you, always thinking outside the box. He drops this bombshell, and everyone's jaws hit the floor. Even Sarah looks like she's seen a ghost. He lays it all out, cool as a cucumber. It's like he's thought about every angle. Let's just be free for a year, he says. See where it takes us. He thinks it'll give them both some perspective, maybe even heal some wounds. Sounds a bit like wishful thinking, but who am I to judge? Sarah, she's hesitant at first. You can see the wheels turning in her head. Is this a trap? Is he serious? But there's this glint in her eye, too. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe relief. Hard to tell with Sarah. She's always been a bit of an enigma. The whole town's buzzing about it. Have you heard about the Michaels? They whisper. An open marriage? Can you believe it? Elmwood hasn't seen this kind of drama since the mayor's scandal a few years back. Some folks think they're nuts. Others are secretly envious, you can tell. For Michael, it's like he's stepping into a new world. He starts doing things he never did before. Joins a local band, starts painting, even signs up for salsa classes. Who knew he had it in him? He's rediscovering parts of himself he buried long ago. It's like watching a caterpillar turn into a butterfly, except with more guitar solos and less cocoon. And Sarah? She's taking it slow, dipping her toes into this newfound freedom. She's exploring too, but in her own way. It's not just about other relationships for her. It's like she's on a quest to find something missing inside her. She even starts therapy, trying to untangle the mess in her head. Their kids are still in the dark, but they sense something's up. Why is daddy playing the guitar? They ask. Why is mommy smiling more? It's bittersweet, really. Michael and Sarah, they're living parallel lives now, worlds apart but under the same roof. It's a gamble, a high-stakes game where the heart's on the line. It's like they're walking a tightrope between rediscovery and disaster. But here's the kicker. Nobody knows how this is going to end. Will they find their way back to each other or drift further apart? It's a story that's writing itself, one day at a time. So, that's where we are. Elmwood's got its very own real-life soap opera, and let me tell you, it's better than TV. Stay tuned, because something tells me there are more twists and turns coming in this story. Enjoy the story, like and subscribe. Let me tell you, Michael's on a whole new vibe. It's like he's been reborn or something. You remember how he used to be, right? Mr. Reliable, always there for his family, the steady hand. But now, it's like he's opened this door to a part of himself that's been hidden away for years. First off, he's got this newfound passion for music. Yeah, Michael, of all people. He's joined this local band. They're a bunch of guys who used to play in high school. They're not half bad, to be honest. Michael's strumming the guitar, and there's this light in his eyes that I haven't seen in years. It's like he's found a piece of himself that got lost in the whole husband and dad gig. And get this, he's painting now, too. I'm not talking doodles and stick figures. I mean actual, proper art. He's got this little studio set up in the garage, canvases and paints everywhere. Who knew he had it in him? It's like he's channeling all his feelings onto those canvases. But wait, there's more. Michael's also thrown himself into this community project. It's something about revamping the old park near the library. He's out there every weekend, shovel in hand, rallying volunteers, planting trees, fixing benches. The whole town's talking about it. Have you seen what Michael's doing at the park? It's like he's become Elmwood's local hero overnight. The change in him is remarkable. It's not just what he's doing, but how he's doing it. There's this energy, this zest for life that's infectious. You can't help but feel a bit inspired watching him. Sarah's watching all this, too. You can see she's surprised, maybe even a bit bewildered. The man she married, the one she thought she knew inside out, is full of surprises. It's like she's seeing him for the first time in years. Their kids are loving this new dad. Daddy's in a band. They brag to their friends. Daddy's making the park pretty. They're seeing a side of their father that's fun and spontaneous. It's a whole new dynamic in the house. So, this whole open marriage thing, it's turning out to be more than just a wild idea. It's a journey of rediscovery for Michael. He's not just finding new hobbies and interests, he's finding himself. And let me tell you, it's something to see. But as much as this is a story of Michael finding new parts of himself, it's also about what's happening between him and Sarah. With all these changes, it's like they're dancing around each other, trying to figure out the steps to a new tune. And trust me, it's a dance worth watching. Sarah's journey? It's a lot less about rediscovering lost passions like Michael, and more about facing some pretty tough realities. She's stepping out of the safety of her marriage, exploring new territories. But it's not just about new relationships or adventures. It's like she's looking for something she can't quite put her finger on. And here's the kicker, those therapy sessions. Sarah's been going to therapy, and it's more than just a chit-chat about feelings. It's deep, heavy stuff. She's digging into her past, unearthing all these emotions and reasons why she did what she did. It's not easy watching her go through it. She's confronting the shadows, the parts of herself she's not so proud of. You can see the toll it's taking on her. The once bubbly, outgoing Sarah is now more reflective, more introspective. She's quieter these days, carries this sense of, I don't know, like she's carrying a weight around. The affair, the therapy, the self-exploration. It's all painting a picture of a woman who's trying to understand her place in the world, her identity beyond just being a wife and a mother. It's like she's standing at a crossroads, trying to figure out which way to go. And the town? Well, Elmwood's still buzzing with gossip. Have you seen Sarah lately? She looks different, doesn't she? People notice the change, and they're curious, maybe a bit concerned too. Her relationship with Michael during all this? It's complicated. With him on his journey and her on hers, it's like they're orbiting each other, sometimes close, sometimes far. It's a dance, but a very different kind from before. The kids, they sense something's up with Mommy too. Why does Mommy look sad? They ask. It breaks your heart a little, seeing them trying to understand things way beyond their years. So, this chapter? It's about Sarah's journey through the murky waters of her choices, her attempts to understand herself better. It's not an easy path, but it's one she knows she has to walk. And as for the marriage? Well, let's just say it's still a question mark. With both of them on these personal journeys, it's anyone's guess where they'll end up. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be an interesting ride. We're nearing the end of this whole open marriage experiment. Michael and Sarah? They're at a crossroads, literally and figuratively. What a year it's been. Like a roller coaster of emotions, twists, and turns. This year for them, it's been wild. A journey, an exploration. Call it what you want, but it's shaken up everything they thought they knew about love, about each other, and about themselves. It's like they've been walking through a maze, each turn revealing something new. Michael, with his band gigs, art, and community work, has been on this path of rediscovery. He's like a new person, almost. He's found these pieces of himself that were lost in the routine of life. It's inspiring, to be honest. You can see it in the way he talks, the way he carries himself. There's a new confidence, a spark. Sarah, on the other hand, has had a more introspective journey. Therapy, self-reflection, facing the hard truths, it's been tough for her. She's been peeling back the layers, trying to get to the heart of why she did what she did. It's a deep dive into the soul, and it hasn't been easy. And here they are now, standing at this metaphorical crossroads. The year's almost up, and they've got to decide what's next. Do they go back to how things were? Is that even possible? Or do they take a different path, maybe one they haven't even seen yet? The town, still buzzing with gossip, is watching them like a hawk. What do you think will happen with the Michaels? Is the question on everyone's lips. Elmwood hasn't had this much excitement in ages. They're kids, they're just happy to see their parents finding themselves. But the uncertainty of what's next is like a cloud hovering over the family. Kids are smart, you know? They pick up on these things. This chapter, it's all about decisions, about facing the future. The year has been a mirror, reflecting everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's shown them what love can be, how it can change, and how sometimes it reveals the very essence of who we are. So, what's next for Michael and Sarah? That's the million-dollar question. This crossroads they're at, it's more than just a decision about their marriage. It's about what they've learned, who they've become, and where they want to go from here. The air's thick with anticipation. Whatever choice they make, it's going to set the course for the rest of their lives. It's a pivotal moment, and let me tell you, everyone's holding their breath to see what happens next. This is where things get really interesting. Just when you think you've got a handle on this story, it throws you a curveball. Michael, our seemingly easygoing guy, drops a bombshell that turns everything on its head. Here's the twist. Michael knew about Sarah's affair all along. Yeah, you heard that right. He knew before he suggested this whole open marriage thing. Talk about a plot twist. It's like something out of a movie. Turns out, this open marriage proposal wasn't just some random idea. It was a plan, a strategy, meticulously thought out. Michael, he's smarter than he lets on. He wanted Sarah to face up to what she did, to really understand the impact of her actions. It's like he's been playing chess while the rest of us were playing checkers. Sarah, when she hears this, you can see the whole range of emotions playing across her face. Shock, disbelief, maybe even a bit of admiration. It's a lot to process. The man she thought she knew, the man she thought was reeling from her betrayal, had been steps ahead the whole time. And the town? Oh, the town's reaction is priceless. Did you hear about Michael? He knew all along. Elmwood hasn't had this much drama since, well, ever. It's all anyone can talk about at the grocery store, the post office, you name it. The kids, thankfully, are blissfully unaware of this new revelation. They're just going about their kid business, but you can't help but wonder how all this adult drama is going to affect them in the long run. This chapter, it's all about unmasking the truth, about the games people play in the name of love and hurt. Michael, with his grand plan, has forced everything out into the open. It's a bold move, but you've got to wonder at what cost. Sarah's grappling with this new reality. It's one thing to be caught in an affair, but another to realize that your partner has been orchestrating this elaborate response. It's a complex mix of feelings. As for their marriage, this revelation throws everything into a new light. What does it mean for them now? It's like they're back at square one, but with all the cards laid out on the table. Michael's big revelation? It's like a grenade going off in the middle of their relationship. Everything's up in the air now, and trust. Well, that's become this super fragile thing, teetering on the edge. So, Michael's grand plan, his whole idea of forcing Sarah to confront her actions, it's out there. And it's messing with their heads, big time. The trust they had, which was already shaky, now it's like walking on thin ice. Every word, every look between them is loaded with a million unsaid things. Sarah, she's reeling. It's one thing to be guilty about an affair, but realizing that your partner has been playing this long game, that's a whole new level of complicated. She's hurt, confused, and yeah, maybe a little impressed by Michael's cunning. It's a tangled mess of emotions. And Michael, he's not sitting pretty either. Sure, his plan worked, but now he's got to deal with the fallout. Did he go too far? Was it worth it? It's like he's opened Pandora's box, and there's no closing it now. Elmwood, our little town, is still buzzing like a hive of bees. Can you believe what Michael did? What's going to happen to them now? It's the juiciest piece of gossip we've had in years, and no one's missing a chance to talk about it. Their kids, poor things, they're caught in the middle of this storm. They don't know the details, but kids are smart. They sense the tension, the undercurrents of something not quite right. It's tough on them, seeing their parents go through this. This chapter, it's all about navigating this new, shaky ground. Trust, manipulation, forgiveness, it's a complex web, and Michael and Sarah are right in the middle of it. They've got to figure out if there's a way through this labyrinth, or if it's the end of the road for them. The thing is, it's not just about the affair or the open marriage anymore. It's about how well they really know each other, about what they're willing to forgive, what they can't forget. It's about looking at the person you've loved for years and wondering if you ever really knew them at all. This is where everything comes to a head, where all the illusions get shattered. It's the dramatic climax we've all been waiting for, and trust me, it doesn't disappoint. So, Sarah's betrayal, right? We thought we knew the whole story, but there's more, much more. Just when you think things can't get more twisted, the full extent of her affair comes out. And it's not pretty. It turns out, it wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It was deeper, longer, and way more serious than anyone, especially Michael, realized. This revelation, it hits like a ton of bricks. It's not just the affair itself. It's the lies, the deceit, the whole web of untruths Sarah had spun. Everything comes crashing down around her. The trust, the love, the life she had with Michael, it's all in jeopardy now. Michael, he's devastated. It's one thing to try to forgive a mistake, but this? It's a whole other level of betrayal. You can see the pain in his eyes, the sense of being utterly lost. He thought he knew his wife, but now? Now, he's not sure he ever did. And Sarah, she's watching her world crumble. Everything she held dear, her marriage, her family, her reputation in Elmwood, it's slipping through her fingers like sand. It's a stark moment of realization, seeing the consequences of her actions laid bare. The town's reaction is a mix of sympathy and shock. Poor Michael, they say. Who would have thought Sarah could do such a thing? Elmwood's never seen drama like this, not in all its years. The kids, bless their hearts, they're the real victims in all of this. Caught in the crossfire of their parents' crumbling marriage, they're trying to make sense of a world that's suddenly turned upside down. This chapter, it's about the harsh reality of actions and consequences. It's about the realization that sometimes, what we think is hidden in the dark will eventually come to light. And when it does, it can destroy everything we've built. Michael and Sarah, standing amidst the ruins of their once happy life, are forever changed. The journey they've been on, with all its twists and revelations, has left them both deeply scarred. It's a poignant ending to a tale of love, betrayal, and the complex tapestry of human relationships. As the dust settles, you can't help but wonder what the future holds for them, for their family. One thing's for sure, a 24 male and my ex, 23 female, We're together for about 2 years when she cheated on me. She was the epitome of a good Christian girl. She was in the church choir. She volunteered at the daycare of the church that ran for lower-income members, and she was very devout in her religion. I wasn't raised around religion the way that she was. My parents would bring me to church on major holidays, and that was about it. Every now and then we would go on a Sunday, but it wasn't a priority for my family. I met my girlfriend at an Easter service. I thought she was cute, but I didn't feel like church was the right place to hit on someone. There was a picnic after the service, so I decided that I would strike up a conversation with her then. When I got to know her, I learned that her religion was very important to her. She was extremely devout and valued her relationship with God more than anything. Because I wasn't religious, I thought it would pose some problems in our relationship. However, it was easy for us to get through at first. When we weren't living together, everything was fine. We saw each other whenever we could, but she still prioritized her faith. I would like to point out that she was also abstinent and waiting until marriage. We did other stuff that I won't get into. I loved her and genuinely thought about getting married to her. Originally, she didn't even want to live with a man until she was married. I didn't want to propose to someone without living with them first. I figured it would serve as a nice trial before committing to someone forever. We had a long talk, and we decided that we would rent an apartment together. There were a lot of boundaries in place, so she could keep her vow of abstinence. I never realized just how much time she spent at church until we were living together. As I mentioned, my family wasn't particularly religious, so I didn't join her most of the time. If anything, I considered myself agnostic, and it wasn't something I was willing to budge on. We were living together. Our different religious outlooks became an issue. She was constantly trying to get me to go to services that she was attending. She was pressuring me to read through the Bible, and she was questioning why I felt the way that I did about religion. It started to seem like she wasn't okay with dating a non-religious person after all. I could see that our relationship was going downhill, and it was disheartening. I felt strongly about her, and I thought it was a shame that we weren't able to put those differences aside. However, I wanted to work on it because I did care about her. We ended up taking a short break. We weren't broken up, but we were separating to take some time for both of us and evaluate the relationship. I stayed in the apartment, and she stayed with her parents again. We met up a couple of weeks later and decided we really cared about each other and we're going to give it a try. We changed a lot of behaviors that the other person wasn't thrilled about, and it seemed like things were going better. She stopped talking to me about a lot of the religious things that had been bothering me before. She joined a youth group that met on Thursday nights so she would have some like-minded friends to talk to about her faith. I thought that was a great idea. She kept going, and everything was repairing itself with our relationship. All the doubts that I had before were going away, and I was seriously considering proposing. I went with her to church for an Easter service as I had always done with my family before. While we were there, she introduced me to a lot of the church friends she had that I didn't know. She also introduced me to the youth pastor she spent a lot of time with in the youth group. Just to clarify, because I know when I say youth group, people are probably imagining teenagers and children. The youth group was for young adults, so it was mostly people in their early 20s. Right away, I noticed how friendly they were with each other. It rubbed me the wrong way. I noticed he didn't hug any other members, but he hugged my girlfriend. Something in her demeanor also shifted, and she kept looking over at him and blushing. I thought she must have had a little crush on him. He was a good-looking guy, but she was steadfast in her beliefs, so I didn't imagine they were doing anything. When we got home later that night, I teased her about it. She told me that I was silly for thinking she would have her eyes on any other man. At the time, I was confident in our relationship, so I believed her. Plus, he was a pastor at the church. I assumed he would have decent enough morals not to go after someone in a relationship. One day, she told me that she was thinking about going on a mission trip with her youth group. They were flying out of the country to help rebuild houses in a low-income area that was badly affected by a tropical storm. She had been telling me about how much she wanted to go on a mission trip like that, and I was supportive of it. I told her that if it would make her feel good about something she was doing, she should go for it. She decided to go, and I said goodbye to her about a month later when she left. We made plans to talk every night and message each other regularly. Because she drove to the church, she left her car in the parking lot to drive it back when she returned. I figured it was safe, but I stopped by one day after work just to check on it myself. When I got there, I didn't see her car anywhere. Immediately, I assumed that it had either been towed or someone had stolen it when they saw it sitting there for a while. I went inside and looked for someone who might be able to help me figure out what happened. I actually found the pastor's wife, and I asked her if there were any surveillance cameras or anything in the parking lot to see what happened to her car. I explained that my girlfriend had left it in the lot when she left for the mission trip. The pastor's wife didn't know anything about a mission trip. She thought I was in the wrong church. I explained everything that my girlfriend told me, even naming the youth pastor that she was going with. The pastor and his wife both told me that they had no mission trip planned for that youth group. I knew then that my girlfriend had lied to me about the mission trip in general. If she wasn't on the trip, where was she? I had known her to be a nice, honest girl, and that wasn't adding up with the person that I knew. She wouldn't have lied about going on a trip like that. I was still talking to her, and she was FaceTiming with me, so I knew she was okay. I just couldn't figure out why she lied. I did some digging online, and I found some people who had gone through some similar things with their partners lying about trips. It all boiled down to cheating. My initial thought was that something was going on with the youth pastor. I didn't know where she was, but I needed some kind of confirmation about what she was doing. I was able to do this thing where I made a custom link for something I found online and shared it with her. When she clicked on the link, I could see exactly where she clicked on it from. I drove to the location and I saw her car sitting right in the driveway of a small house. There were a ton of crosses and flags with Bible verses on them in the yard, so I figured I was right to suspect the youth pastor of something. I didn't want to just knock on the door and see what was going on, so I stayed outside for a little while and kept an eye on it. Eventually, I saw both of them walking out of the house holding hands and getting into his car. I followed them to a restaurant outside of town where they clearly went on a date. They drove home not long after. I waited outside his house for a while, contemplating what to do. I heard them laughing outside while I was there, so I got out of the car to walk around to the backyard. I was able to peek over a fence to see both of them inside of a hot tub. Both of them were completely naked, and my girlfriend was straddling him. From the sounds of it, they were having sex. She hadn't even had sex with me, and we'd been together for a couple of years at that point. I took a quick picture as proof so I could bring it up to her so she wouldn't try and lie about it. I went home and pretended like everything was normal until she got back. The following Sunday, when she was getting ready to go to church, I went with her. She was surprised, but it seemed to make her happy. If she knew the real reason I was going, she wouldn't have been. At the end of every church sermon, the pastor opened the floor for people to say something nice or read a Bible verse to the rest of the churchgoers. My girlfriend was surprised to see me get up and speak. I introduced myself to the church, and I told them that I didn't know much about religion. I mentioned that my girlfriend was very devout and involved in the church. I even told them that I was considering marrying her. Everybody thought that was sweet and looked at my girlfriend with smiles. Then I brought up a passage from the Bible about adultery. I looked at my girlfriend at that moment, and I saw her face go pale. I told them I was excited that my girlfriend was going on a mission trip, only to find out that the mission trip was a lie. Then I explained the entire story to them. Everybody in the room was murmuring to themselves, looking between my girlfriend and the youth pastor. The actual pastor walked me away from the microphone and out of the church. He told me that he understood I was upset, but that wasn't the place to have a conversation like that. I had done everything I needed to, so I didn't really care. I went home and my girlfriend arrived about a half hour later. She yelled and screamed at me for humiliating her in front of people. I told her that she was a liar and I had done so much to make sure she was comfortable and in the relationship, and she turned her back on me to sleep with another man. She told me that she was spiritually connected to him and their relationship differed from ours. I told her that wasn't an excuse. If she wanted to be with him, she should have just broken up with me. I would have understood if our religion and faith were a big issue in the relationship. I told her that she needed to get out of the apartment as soon as possible. She ended up moving out to go live with her parents. I got some calls from them about how angry they were that I aired her dirty laundry at church like that. Apparently, everybody was making her feel very uncomfortable there, so she ended up leaving the church. The same thing happened to the youth pastor. A lot of the members frowned upon his actions and pulled their children out of his group. On top of that, a lot of the young adults that he worked with stopped visiting him. The church ended up looking for a new youth pastor to try and move away from the scandal all of that created. The fact that she lied about going on a mission trip just to be with him is crazy. That was a major lie. She pretended to be helping others when in reality, she was shacked up with the youth pastor at his house. It's a shame that she threw away what she had with you because of her desire to be with him. If the spiritual connection she had with him was so much stronger than what she had with you, she could have come to you and told you that. Breaking up is always the better option in a relationship. I'm glad that you were able to figure out what happened and get away from her before you proposed and dedicated your life to her. Now let's move on to our next story. My wife and I had been together for about 3 years. We met at a movie theater where we both had matinee tickets to see a film. We were the only ones in the entire audience. Before it started, I saw her and thought she was cute. I moved over and sat down next to her, and we struck up a conversation before the movie started. When the film ended, I asked her to grab coffee with me so we could discuss the movie together. We exchanged numbers later that day, and we started dating. We both lived in the city in small studio apartments that we hated. We moved in together about 8 months into dating because we felt very strongly about each other. Plus, with our shared income, we could afford a one-bedroom apartment that was much bigger. We were able to buy furniture for the first time since living in the city, and we're very excited about that. Neither of us had the best jobs in the world. We loved each other, and we thought that was really what mattered. The little extra money that we had we would use for experiences that we could do together, like concerts, movies, festivals, you name it. We didn't have a lot of money in savings at that point. A few months into living together, I said we should just get married. She went with it, and a few days later we were signing papers to the courthouse. It didn't make much of a difference in our relationship, but just knowing we were married was nice. I got offered a job that paid a good deal more than what I was making in the city. We didn't want to move away because we loved the city life, but I couldn't turn down the job. One of the best things about the job was that I would work for 2 weeks straight, 10 hours a day every day, then I would have 3 weeks off. It paid well, but it only paid once a month. We figured out a way for me to take this job and not have to leave the city. Essentially, I was booking a 2-week stay at a hotel and working, then coming back home for the 3 weeks that I was off. We knew that it was going to be a challenge for the first few months because of the extra money we'd be spending on hotels. We figured we could cut back on some things to make that work. Then, when we caught up and good money was coming in, we could start splurging again. My wife wasn't crazy about it. I wasn't giving her luxury bags or meals at 3-star restaurants, but we had the money to go out when we wanted to. During my first stint on the job, my wife kept complaining to me about how bored she was all the time and how she wished I hadn't taken the job. I was frustrated that she couldn't just suck it up for a few months while I did something that would change our lives with how much extra money we would have. About a week into my first work trip, I got a weird message from a friend. We were pretty close, but in recent months drifted away from each other. They messaged me and asked if anything had happened between my wife and me. I was confused and I told them that everything was fine. I was just away working on the new job. I asked about why they thought something was off, and they told me they were at a restaurant and positive they saw my wife with another man on a date. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them that they must have been wrong, but they told me they took a picture just to be sure. They sent it to me and it was my wife. I called my wife right away and asked her about it. She told me that it was a work meeting she was at and that I was overthinking it. I was suspicious, but she had never given me a reason to doubt her in the past, so I was more apt to take her word for it over the friend. I texted the friend and explained everything, then they apologized for overstepping their bounds. I returned home for my 3-week stay there, and everything seemed normal with my wife for the first week. During the other 2 weeks, I noticed that she was on her phone a lot more than usual. She was also taking a lot of selfies, which was strange for her. I was curious about who she was sending these pictures to if it wasn't me. I took a mental note of her Snapchat score one day, and I checked it about a week later, and it had increased by over 100. I kept an eye on it while I was away for my next 2-week stint at work, and it was steadily increasing more than it was when I checked it while I was home, and she wasn't sending me anything on Snapchat at all. I was in my head about why the score was changing so much, so I did a quick Google search to see if there were some obvious reasons. Almost everything I found confirmed that she was sending and receiving messages. From everything I gathered with other people asking these questions, they were concerned that their partners were cheating. When I got home after work, I kept that thought in the back of my head, but I didn't say anything. I didn't have any proof, and telling her that I noticed her Snapchat score increasing was going to make me look crazy and jealous. The first opportunity one had to take a look at her phone, I jumped at it. She was in the shower, and she left it sitting on the bed. When I looked through it, I found 3 major things. The first was that she had an app downloaded to help sugar daddies find people to date. Her profile showed her in skimpy dresses and lingerie showing off her body. Dozens of men were messaging her. Some even sent her money on Venmo to prove they were the real deal. The second thing I noticed was dozens of Snapchat messages from men with nicknames like Ben Defense Attorney Tesla and others like that. She was exchanging nudes with the men on Snapchat. The third thing was her text message exchanges with some of the men. She had clearly met up with at least 3 of them. They had taken her to fancy restaurants and bought her new clothes and things for the house. I hadn't noticed the things before, but when I looked around I saw them. Through the messages I figured out she brought one guy back to our apartment and had sex with him in our bed. I was furious with what I saw. It was obvious it was some kind of retaliation against the spending cuts we were doing while my job was new. She wanted fancy dinners and expensive wine, so she lied and stabbed me in the back. I sent myself a bunch of screenshots and videos of the things that I'd seen, so I could have them for our impending divorce. There was no way I was going to be staying with her and sending all of the money that I was earning at my new job to her when she was doing that. I spent the rest of my time at home secretly looking for another apartment closer to my job. I didn't want anything to do with her, and I didn't even want to be in the city because it reminded me of her so much. When the time came for me to go back to work, my wife really had no idea I was leaving for good. I took a lot of things out while she was at work, so she wouldn't notice me taking everything out of the apartment. When I got there, I moved into a new apartment and took my wife's name off of my bank account. I had been looking for a divorce attorney while I was still in the city. I had papers and I was sending them to her in the mail. I got off work one night and looked at my phone to see I had dozens of missed calls and text messages from her. She had received the petition for divorce in the mail, and that explained everything about why I wanted a divorce. She didn't know why I was accusing her of cheating. I sent her a text message telling her everything I knew and a couple of screenshots I had taken. Apparently, she was going to sue me for going through her private property. I didn't know how well that would hold up in court. We ended up going through with the divorce, and I was able to get my name off of the lease in the city, so she was solely responsible for it. I posted about the divorce on social media before she commented on anything, so I could have the narrative in my own hands. I had a gut feeling she was going to try and blame the separation on me, so I wanted to get ahead of it. We were divorced and I didn't owe her anything in spousal support, but I figured she was still getting a lot of her money from the men she was seeing. I had a few of their phone numbers from the screenshots that I had gathered. I threw all of them into a group chat and I sent a message telling them that my ex-wife was married to me when she was with them and that she was talking to countless men and taking their money. Some of them didn't care about it. They probably assumed that was what was happening anyway, but it seemed like a couple of them thought that they were in something serious with her. I hoped they would cut things off with her. That would be ideal, so she would not have any of these men paying for her things anymore. She called me a few days after that and cursed me out over the phone for ruining her relationships. She probably lost out on a nice sum of money from the men she was stringing along. I felt bad for them in some ways, but at the same time, they were on a sugar daddy dating website, so they had to know what they were getting into. Now I live closer to my job, so I'm not having to commute back and forth, which is great. I have a nice apartment, and I'm making a decent living. It's been about a year since all this happened, so I'm getting back out into dating and hoping for the best. Not a lot of people would do that, and that seems to be a catalyst for you discovering this whole other life she was living while you were away. It's honestly disgusting that she would bring them back to your own apartment and sleep with them there. I understand it's probably safer for her to do it there rather than going to a virtual stranger's house, but it's very disrespectful. I'm glad that you messaged the men that she was talking to. I would bet that many of them thought they were the only one she was talking to. It seems like she was lying and misleading quite a few of them. I would assume that none of them knew she was married. Hopefully that did affect the income she was making from all of that, and she will look back and regret what she did. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact. Happy anniversary, babe. That's what I should be waking up to. Flowers, maybe breakfast in bed. Instead, it's the usual gruff, gotta run. Meetings early, grumbled from the bathroom. No kiss, not even eye contact. Don't get me wrong, he's not a monster. He's just there, like a piece of furniture I'm so used to I bump into it without thinking. And yeah, the forgotten anniversary hurts. It's stupid, but it's like a tiny crack in the perfect picture of our life. A crack I can't stop staring at. The gym is my lifesaver these days. Not for the weight loss, I don't need that. It's for my sanity. The sweat, the burn. It drowns out the nagging voice telling me something's off. And then he walked in. The new trainer. Hot, obviously, but more than that, he saw me. Not tired wife me, but me. We started with the usual trainer banter, form corrections, representative counts. Then there were the jokes I actually laughed at, the way his eyes lingered a beat too long when I stretched. Harmless, right? But God, it felt good to have that spark again. That night, I lied. Told my husband it was a work emergency, late dinner with clients, blah blah blah. It rolled off my tongue so easily. Scary, that, instead of fake clients, it was the trainer. Drinks turned into something more intense, something I swore I'd never do again. The first text to him was just, "Thanks for tonight." But by the time I hit send, it was a whole different kind of message. The thrill of it. Yeah, it was twisted. But in the glow of my phone screen in the dark, I didn't see the cliff I was speeding towards. You know that feeling when you start to forget your own name? Not literally, but I look in the mirror, and it's like I'm playing a part. Dutiful wife, putting breakfast on the table, faking a smile as my husband mumbles about work. It feels like a badly written play. Lying becomes an art form. Book club ran late. Traffic was a nightmare. Emergency project, gotta stay at the office. The excuses flow out so easily, I almost believe them myself. My husband, he's no fool though. He sees the gleam in my eye, the way I rush out the door, a bounce in my step he hasn't witnessed in ages. He doesn't call me out. It's almost worse, like he's waiting, curious how far this rabbit hole goes. I hate him for it, but something twisted in me is morbidly fascinated too. Like, how screwed up can I get before it all implodes? My best friend, bless her, knows. At first, it was all envy in her voice, the hot trainer, the late night escapades. But last, girls' night out, which basically means her buying me shots as I spill my guts, her tone shifted. "This isn't healthy," she said, the worry lines on her face way deeper than mine. Problem is, she's right. Lying to her is one thing. Lying to myself is harder. Because truth is, it's not just the flirting with the trainer anymore. It's how I feel in bed with my husband. Like I'm going through the motions, mind drifting to a gym. A stronger pair of hands, sweat, and that intoxicating mix of lust and danger. Yesterday, in the middle of a squat set, the trainer's hand, accidentally, brushed against mine while he was spotting. The jolt of it nearly made me drop the bar. It wasn't even sexual in some obvious way, but it felt like a bomb had gone off. It's that charge now, every glance, every correction on my form. Like we're playing this high-stakes game, and everyone around us is blind to it. The email about a mandatory industry conference is practically still warm when I book my flight. It's a flimsy cover. I've half-assed my way through webinars in my sweatpants, not trekked across state lines for a hotel ballroom full of suits. But work anxiety? That's nothing compared to the thrill shooting through me every time I add another layer to my web of lies. The hotel room is generic, the kind of place that blurs into itself whether you're in Atlanta or Albuquerque. But it's our palace. The build-up, the weeks of stolen glances and texts, it all seems to culminate here. The kiss isn't gentle, it's desperate, like we're both starving and this is our only meal. Afterwards, it hits me. I'm not sneaking around anymore. This is a choice, a deliberate dynamiting of everything I've built. My brain screams, "Stop," and my traitorous body tangles itself even closer to him, whispering, "More." The flight home is a blur. I see my husband waiting at the airport and feel a sickening mix of guilt and contempt. Pathetic, isn't it, to hate the man you're betraying? But it's how I justify it all. He's boring. I deserve excitement. He may as well be made of cardboard for all the love I feel. Lying, I discover, is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Work emergencies, migraines, even faked errands to the grocery store become pretexts for rendezvous with the trainer. The rush is sickening, but it beats the crushing dullness of the life that I've built for myself. Is there a point where the lies become so big you can't even see the truth anymore? I don't know, but I'm determined to find out. My heart's in my throat as he picks up the laundry basket. It's got my secret phone tucked inside, the one he must never, ever see. He dumps the clothes on the bed, oblivious, and my entire body goes cold. I should feel guilty. Instead, there's a flicker of annoyance. Why doesn't he suspect something? It's insulting. The trainer's voice is playing on a loop in my head. The ultimatum, leave him, be with me. It used to feel like a daring escape. Now, it's a countdown clock, tick tick ticking above my head. Do I have the guts? Or am I just a pathetic coward who'll never cut the cord? I try that stupid pros and cons list thing I see in those cheesy rom-coms. Conside. He makes a decent salary. The house is nice enough. Blah blah blah. Pro side. The trainer's abs. Seriously, that's the depth of my deliberation. My perfect life is suddenly flimsy, and I'm clinging to the thread of this destructive affair like a lifeline. My husband, the poor bastard, is actually trying. The flowers on the kitchen table, probably the kind you grab in the grocery store on sale. A half-assed attempt at a candle at dinner. It makes me want to scream. Doesn't he get how pointless it is? Every gesture is like pouring gasoline on the fire of my resentment. Here's the sickest part. I get pissed at him. For not seeing me cheating right under his nose, for not making a scene, for not giving me the perfect excuse to walk away. I hate myself even more for that twisted logic. But what's the alternative? Admitting I'm the monster in this story. I'm starting to crack under the pressure, that much is clear. Time to decide. Is this where I implode? Or do I pull the trigger on the rest of my life? There's something ruthlessly satisfying about opening that secret bank account. Not for the money, though that's part of it, but for the act itself. It's a rebellion against what? Decency? My own sanity? It doesn't matter anymore. Every dollar I transfer feels like a brick pulled from the foundations of my old life. The whispers about my precious trainer should be a wake-up call. Turns out, I'm not special. Other gym bunnies, a bored housewife or two. He's a cliché, a walking romance novel trope. But it somehow doesn't deter me. It fuels something cold inside, a determination to win this game, no matter how idiotic the prize. My husband becomes a target. Each dinner together is an exercise in how far I can push him before he snaps. A barbed comment about his job, a snide remark about his fading hairline. I'm testing how much it'll take for him to throw me out, give me that righteous out. Finally, he confronts me, not with accusations and yelling, but with something worse, a quiet desperation. Is there someone else? He asks, and his voice cracks on that last word. I lie. It's a perfect lie, smooth and rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. There's a flicker of something die in his eyes when I say it. And weirdly, I feel a surge of power. Telling my best friend is the final nail in the coffin of my old self. I expect the moral outrage, the tearful pleading for me to reconsider. Instead, I get a flat, horrified stare. I should feel ashamed, but instead, there's a sense of perverse pride. See, I've become the kind of woman people write Reddit posts about. The monster, it appears, is fully unleashed. He sleeps beside me, his breathing a quiet rhythm in the dark room. Before, the sound would be comforting. Now, it's like background noise, a low hum I barely register. He's become a ghost in our own home, hollowed out after the confrontation. And do I feel bad? I get these fleeting twinges, pinpricks of something resembling guilt. But they're easily swept aside. The escape plan takes shape. Apartment listings, a flimsy excuse for taking time off work, coordinating a moving company for the day he's at the office. It's like a twisted jigsaw puzzle, each piece falling into place with chilling precision. My life is a spreadsheet now, organized around the day I'll finally walk out. Ironically, it's my newfound pep that almost trips me up. I'm less grumpy, more distracted. He notices, of course. A flicker of hope in those tired eyes. Maybe he thinks this whole nightmare was a bad dream. My stomach twists, not out of guilt, but at the cruel absurdity of his misplaced optimism. His birthday approaches. I still buy a card, the saccharine kind, full of hearts and empty phrases that might have been genuine a lifetime ago. I cook his favorite meal, the one he used to rave about after a long day at work. But every minute in the kitchen is laced with a bitter satisfaction. This is our last supper together. The present, it's the most vicious thing I can conjure. A framed photo, one of those nauseatingly happy couple shots. So you remember what you're throwing away. I managed to choke out. His eyes go wide. The confusion and dawning horror are a delicious substitute for birthday cheer. Part of me wants to explain it all, the lies, the trainer, my utter contempt for him. Instead, I leave it hanging in the air, a silent scream far more powerful than words. The suitcase sits open on the bed, a gaping maw waiting to swallow what's left of my old life. My hands are shaking a little as I toss clothes in, but it's not nerves. It's anticipation, the adrenaline of finally doing the thing I've been planning for so long. The speech is memorized, every word a bullet, carefully aimed to cause maximum damage. It's not just about the affair. It's about years of simmering resentment, twisted into a weapon to hurt him as badly as possible. My voice is even, almost robotic, devoid of the screaming and tears he probably expected. He doesn't explode. There's no yelling, no thrown plates. He collapses, something deep inside him breaking. The sobs are quiet at first, then build into ragged, gasping breaths. He begs, not for me to stay, but to explain. How could I? Why was he never enough? My answers are a litany of his failures, real and imagined. Deep down, I know I'm being monstrous, but I feel nothing but a cold, clinical satisfaction. Packing the last few things feels like a scene from a movie. It's surreal, even a bit ridiculous. The click of the front door closing behind me is like thunder, a finality I didn't anticipate. The trainer's place is meant to be paradise, and for a few hours, fueled by adrenaline and some celebratory champagne, it almost feels that way. The sex is urgent, a desperate bid to prove something to myself, but lying in his arms later, in a bed that smells like nothing familiar, the rush fades. I see it now, the tacky furniture, the faint odor of stale sweat. He's not a hero, he's just a guy. The first night in my new apartment is pure desolation. The cheesy inspirational poster I bought on a whim feels like a mockery in the dim light. This is the life I chose? Traded one kind of prison for another, all in the name of a passion that's already burning out? I push the thought away, but it lingers, an uninvited guest at the pity party I'm throwing for myself. The first blow comes with a buzz. His phone lights up on the bedside table, and the name flashing across the screen isn't mine. It's one of the names I'd heard whispered, a fellow gym rat, I guessed. He plays it off, a casual, just a workout buddy. But my glorious escape plan is already stained with the same tired lies that suffocated my marriage. Then comes the missing money. Not a huge amount, but enough to feel the sting. My empowering escape fund, siphoned off without a second thought. I suspect where it went. Another woman. Another desperate gamble that she's the real thing. Suddenly, I'm not just pathetic for what I did to my husband. I'm pathetic for letting this bargain bin Romeo play me the same way. My phone pings. It's him, my ex. A single picture of the dog we used to share, with a question mark. Stupid. It's so childishly manipulative, and yet, it hits me like a punch to the gut. A wave of longing, nostalgia for the life I blew apart, crashes over me and leaves me gasping for air. The friends I confess to, most have gone ghost. My family. Well, the icy disapproval on my mother's face is more brutal than anything she could have screamed at me. There's pity in their eyes, mixed with a touch of disgust. It's isolating, this spectacular fall from grace. I've built my own prison, brick by self-absorbed brick. The nights are the worst. That's when the bottle comes out, and the desperate attempts to silence my own thoughts begin. One drunken night, the phone is in my hand before my brain kicks in. His name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. Not for forgiveness, not even an apology. I just need to scream, to rage, to puke out the ugliness inside of me onto someone else. He picks up, his voice startled and sleepy, and then I freeze. The words won't come. He hangs up, and only then do the sobs begin. This is rock bottom, right? I should at least get that certainty. But I suspect it gets worse from here. Each morning begins the same. The pounding head, the nausea roiling in my stomach, and the crushing wave of shame as the memories of the night before come flooding back. It should be enough to break me. Instead, there's a cold, hard nugget of defiance buried deep down. I brought this on myself, yes, but I'm damned if I'll let it destroy me completely. My phone vibrates. My heart sinks, expecting a hateful text from the trainer, a demand from a bill collector. It's my ex-best friend. The voicemail she leaves is short, awkward. It's laced with disapproval, that much is clear. But there's something else, a hesitant admission that whatever I did, this level of misery must be its own punishment. It's barely a scrap of support, but after the complete isolation, it feels like a feast. Survival mode kicks in. I claw my way back into the world, taking a soul-sucking job waitressing at a dive bar. The tips are crap, the customers are worse, but it's money, and the exhaustion leaves little mental space to wallow. Each day is just a sequence of tasks. Get up, make coffee, survive the shift, collapse into bed. The news about my ex stings, but not in the gut-wrenching way I'd imagined. Of course he moved on. I'm the one who insisted he deserved better, remember? The ache is there, but it's a dull throb now, edged with a twisted relief. He's rebuilding, while I'm still floundering in the wreckage. Late one night, after scrubbing spilled beer off the floor, I finally break. The laptop creaks open, and the words start to flow. It begins as a furious rant, blaming him, the trainer, the cruel unfairness of the world. But then, the typing takes on a life of its own. It's an outpouring of self-disgust, and beneath that, a desperation for, what? Forgiveness? Understanding? I don't even know, but the act of putting it into stark, unfiltered words is like releasing some of the pressure. Hitting post is both terrifying and liberating. Checking the post is a compulsion I can't resist. One minute it has a few dozen anonymous replies. The next, it's a raging wildfire spreading across subreddits I've never even heard of. The comments are a brutal mix, just as I expected. Scathing insults, righteous fury, the occasional, girl, run, tossed in for good measure. But there's more, messages from people who see themselves in my story, not condoning it, but offering a grim understanding. A woman who cheated after her husband's neglect. A guy who'd blown up his family for a passionate fling that fizzled out. These snippets of shared brokenness, they're harder to face than the outright hate. I spend hours curled up on my stained couch, scrolling through the responses. Each one cuts a little deeper, stripping away whatever defenses I had left. The monstrous person I tried to convince myself I wasn't. They all see her, crystal clear. There's no point in fighting it anymore. The truth of what I've become hangs in the virtual air, inescapable. Regret seeps in, surprisingly potent. It's not about my ex-husband. God knows, I hurt him irrevocably. No, this is new. It's about the woman I see reflected in all these anonymous eyes, selfish, reckless, someone who traded the ordinary safety of her life for a handful of cheap thrills and ended up with exactly nothing. In a fit of either self-preservation or cowardice, I hit delete. The post vanishes, but it's a pointless gesture. The echoes of it linger, the words burned into my brain. What I've done, the person I was so quick to become, that can't be erased. Endings are a luxury I don't deserve. My story is just beginning the long, grueling climb back towards something. Not forgiveness. I'm not that delusional. Maybe a flicker of self-respect, the knowledge that I won't make the same devastating mistakes again. It won't be a cinematic redemption arc, just a hard slog, one day at a time. But hell, at least